Welcome to How Ecology Works. In this podcast, we cover all topics in ecology and how you might apply them in your future career. All right, so today we want to talk about the elements that you need to know about implementing fire, so using prescribed fire. And I have two people here, Zach Prusak and Andy Rappe, who both have an immense amount of experience planning burning and also carrying out prescribed burns to meet ecological objectives. So uh, you guys want to tell us the things that you are using and maybe the tools, the different aspects that go into planning and implementing a prescribed fire.
Sure. Thanks, Marcus. I'll start out. My name is Zachary Prusak, the current Florida fire manager for the Nature Conservancy. And I've been doing fire for about 34 years and have planned a number of fires in different settings. And overall, when you go to set fire to a unit or a preserve or a park, you have to have certain objectives, ecological and safety. And if you are a private landowner in Florida, it is recommended that you go through a course that would allow you to become a certified prescribed burn manager in Florida, which gives you legal protection to the level of gross negligence. And if you go through that class and become a certified prescribed burn manager, you'll have a prescription that you fill out that it has elements that also help you meet both your goals and keep you legally protected. And so, Andy, if you could just go through what your prescription has and why you have those elements in them.
Sure. So it covers all of your bases. At the end of the day, it's a plan, right? This plan happens to be a legal document, but it's a plan that says how many people you need to complete the burn, what kind of equipment you need to complete the burn, and by equipment, down here in Florida on most of our burns, we're talking about brush trucks, pickup trucks converted into fire trucks, essentially type 6 engines, we call them. So do you need those? How many do you need? Things like that. What kind of equipment do you need? And then the heart of it really is the weather parameters. So they call it a prescribed fire often, and this is the kind of one of the things you're prescribing is you burn it under such and such conditions. So that's telling you what the temperature and humidity and wind speed and direction is a big one, things like that. So all this stuff is quantified of what you'll burn it in. Is it okay to burn it with 10-mile-an-hour winds? Do you need no wind? Do you need some wind to keep it off a road? All that stuff's very specific that you'll have in there. So that's a big one. And another big one is your contingency plan. What are you going to do if it gets out? Who are you going to call? What values are at stake downwind? If you have to burn it with such and such wind direction, where is that going to push the fire if the worst happens? So to kind of think through all that and then have a documented plan, having a medical plan of if somebody were to get hurt. So all these are really important parts of the prescription that you follow and you document and have. I physically carry it with me. It's in a gallon Ziploc bag in my pocket on that whole burn, all day, and you're taking notes in it and things like that. So that is that's what starts out giving you that prescribed part of the prescribed burning. So it is really critical, and maps, of course, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. All the planning that goes into it, and another part of the plan is even smoke management, right? So, do you have to have part of that plan that actually determines where the smoke is going to go? Because, I mean, ideally, that's the only part of the fire that goes off site, right?
Yeah, and it's something that as a new burner, you might not realize that the smoke's often a bigger deal than the actual flames. Where's that going to go, especially in populated areas or near roads or anything like that. And there's a really cool tool that I use. I'm in Florida, so I'm getting my burns permitted through the Florida Forest Service, and they have a web tool where you can click a polygon. You can even do it on an iPad of where you're gonna burn, and then it'll generate a smoke model of where your smoke's gonna go. And
That's
I'll do
awesome.
it you can do it the night before, or the morning of, and it'll pull the weather and figure it out and generate a column, and then that'll go to the personnel at the Florida Forest Service, and they can see where your smoke goes. And then I'll print that out, and print that map out and put it in my prescription, and have it for reference. So it is really important. And then figuring out kind of what that smoke's doing throughout the day, physically getting eyes on it and seeing if that matches reality, right? Can you ground truth that smoke and see if the math and reality are right for the day? But that's a good point. That's critically important.
Yeah, the smoke, and that's also a good segue into thinking of these prescriptions, these plans, as more than just the unit that has fire breaks around it. When you look at, when you plan the fires, you have to look at everything outside your unit boundary. And so the smoke mapping, the smoke plotting allows you to look many miles downwind. But also, one of the important parts of planning a fire as a land manager is getting to know your neighborhood, getting to know your neighbors. It's often forgotten when people see a plan, a burn plan, that, well, it's just the sheet with all the weather and the people you need. But there's a lot of time, months or even years, that goes into that before you even write something down. And that is getting to know your neighborhood and neighbors around you.
Or even letting them know when you're going to light things on fire. So now we've got a whole planning process that could potentially be planning for years, like you were saying, leading up to the fire, where we then have a prescription that's written. You call, in this case, the Florida Forestry Commission to get it permitted, and then now we're ready to go to the area that we're going to ignite fire. So I guess, could you tell us a little bit about the process of actually igniting the fire, and also some of the tools that you have around when you're doing that?
Sure. I'll start. Zach, interrupt me and jump in anytime. So we'll do a briefing in the morning, and that's a whole process of making sure everyone's on the same page and has their maps, and you go through all those medical and escape fire contingency plans and all that good stuff. So you do a very thorough briefing, and then you get out in the woods, and you've picked your area of the burn unit that you're going to light, where you're going to start lighting for the day. And you get out there and you physically take a weather on site. I mentioned kind of ground truth in the smoke and see what it's doing. You've got you've pulled your weather and seeing
So you
if,
have like a Kestrel handheld unit or something that you're doing that with?
yeah, most of the time it's a Kestrel these days, or there's still a series of analog hand tools you can use with thermometers and that kind of stuff. So we use both, and make sure they're good to go. And then you'll check and pull a weather on site and see if that matches the forecast weather, and make sure that both of those data sets are within those parameters we discussed in the prescription. So if all of that's good, I'm checking a box. And then we'll use what's called a drip torch. This is just a metal cylinder with a handle, and it's got a wick coming out the top. It's about 15 pounds full, and you'll use that to light a mixture of gas and diesel fuel. We call it torch mix. So you light a little fire with that, and that's your test fire. So
Okay, so
you
you're saying, so the initial ignition with the drip torch, you have a mixture of fuels. What's the mixture ratio?
yeah, it depends. You're using gas to get the combustion, then you're using diesel to get it to keep burning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
like half and half, or three quarters to one quarter or something.
3 to 1 sometimes.
Okay.
A lot of it depends on sort of the flammability of what you got.
Okay, so some combination probably within those ratios somewhere. And then you're letting the initial fire that you actually light on the ground within your burn unit is a test fire, right?
it's a test fire, yeah, and doing it where you would start the burn. You're not doing it in the middle of the thing. You're usually doing it in a corner up against the road. The idea is you have a lot of control and you have all your resources there, all your people and trucks and everything there to put it out if you need to.
Yeah, and Andy, real quick, I'll just put in, this is often the most critical part of any fire, because if you have a lot of resources available, people have traveled a long way to help you with the fire, and your test fire may not be acting like you think it should. And keep in mind, this is early in the fire, and if it isn't acting in a way that you predict, sometimes the best call will be to shut down the fire. And it's often one of the hardest choices a burn boss can make. He or she has a lot of responsibility, but the test fire is a critical part of any burn operation.
Yeah. So you're actually looking at the behavior of the fire in the small corner, like you said. Is that typically the corner where you would start lighting your backing fire to initiate the burn?
Most of the time, yeah, and it's doing two things. It's physically helping you put in that black line,
Hmm.
and then it's also giving you data, right? You're getting
Right.
observations on what the
So
the
you're actually,
fire's doing.
yeah. So a lot of the the art of this is looking at the behavior of that and determining whether or not the type of fire, based on the behavior of the test fire, will allow you to burn and accomplish the objectives that you've set for burning the
Yeah.
unit to begin with.
That's right. So whatever fuel is going to be driving your fire, for me, it's grass, it's wiregrass, and these longleaf systems. You need to do your test fire in an area that's got those representative fuels, and that might always not always be at a corner. So you got to make some decisions. But it's which way is your smoke going, and all sorts of other factors. And Zach alluded to it, but it's not just, are we going to be able to keep this fire inside our burn unit? It goes the other way too. Is the fire behavior too minimal, or is the fire behavior just not going to meet those objectives that you have written out in your prescription? Because those are usually quantifiable metrics. I'll burn up X amount of X, so are you going to be able to meet that? And that takes a lot of kind of dirt time to figure that out.
Yeah, a
And
lot of
that's,
experience.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, what other kind of tools do you make sure that you have on hand when you're going to initiate a fire?
A lot of it depends on the fuels that you're working in, but for us in the Southeast, we use a lot of hand tools, council rakes, things called flaps or flappers, leaf rakes, some sort of cutting axe or Pulaski for mop up, and water. We are spoiled in Florida. We have access usually to a good amount of water, and our vehicles will often carry water. For the past 10 to 15 years, we've been relying more and more on UTVs and their ability to carry a little water and an engine and a pump and hand tools and people to move around a unit quickly. So basically, it's some form of water delivery system that you can put things out, you can wet lines down, and you can control fuels with hand tools. It's essential because these hand tools are the extension of our bodies, to control that fire triangle.
Hmm, really interesting. Well, I really appreciate it, guys. I think everyone has a lot to learn from all of your experiences in implementing fire, and I really appreciate you taking time to give us a few of these basics that we need to think about before initiating fire.
Oh, thanks, Marcus. Much appreciated.
Yep. Thanks for having us. Enjoy talking fire.